In the dying heat of a Wyoming summer, every rider passed the old man slumped by the dusty road. Boots split, eyes hollow, pride long gone. No one stopped. No one cared. Until a young ranch hand named Eli McCrae pulled his horse to a halt and asked 5 simple words. "You all right, sir?" He didn't know it then, but that moment would awaken a forgotten soldier, reopen a decades-old wound, and turn a broken drifter into the hero a whole town had stopped believing in. What followed proved that one act of kindness can resurrect a man's name and a boy's soul. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Everyone passed the old man slumped by the dusty road that morning. His boots split at the seams, his lips cracked, his eyes sunken with more than just hunger. It was shame too. The kind a man carried when he had once been something and now was invisible, and though ranch hands and stage drivers and wagon crews rumbled past him in clouds of red dust, not one so much as glanced down. Not until young Eli McCrae reined in his horse, stepped off and said, "You all right, sir?" Not knowing that those words would change the course of both their lives forever, because the old man who called himself Tom just nodded and said he was fine, though his hand trembled too hard to hide as he tried to lift his canteen, and Eli, only 18 and barely trusted with fence post jobs, felt something tighten in his chest, something that didn't let him ride on like the others had. So he gave Tom the rest of his water and a chunk of jerky and sat beside him in the heat, asking nothing, judging nothing, and when Tom said softly, "Didn't always sit in the dust, boy," Eli just said, "I believe you," and that quiet respect opened the floodgates, because Tom had been a sharpshooter, a tracker, and once rode with Colonel Carver's unit through Apache territory, until a bullet shattered his knee and the Army left him with a discharge and nothing else. And when Eli asked why he wasn't getting a pension or staying at a vet's ranch, Tom said he never signed the right papers, never could read or write, and the captain who promised to help him died in the war, and then things fell apart. First his wife, then his farm, then his name, until no one remembered who Tom Evers was except the ghosts he carried. And Eli, whose father always told him to steer clear of beggars and drunkards, saw in Tom something fierce and raw that didn't match the broken body in front of him. So he said, "Come on home with me, just for tonight," knowing Pa would lose his mint but not caring, because leaving Tom there felt like abandoning more than a man. It felt like giving up on what decency meant. So Tom rode behind Eli into Sundown Ridge, holding tight to the saddle horn, every bump a stab in his bad leg. And when they reached the McCrae ranch, Eli told him to wait by the barn, while he tried to explain things to his father. But before he could, Pa stormed out red-faced, spit flying, shouting, "What the hell is that man doing on our land?" And Tom, too proud to be pitied, started to turn back down the trail, until Eli stood between them and said,
"He fought for this country, Pa. He bled for it."
"Same as you said Grandpa did." And something in those words struck Pa hard because he stopped shouting, looked at Tom again and saw the limp the old cavalry had, the scars around his eyes, and asked slow, "Who'd you serve under?" And when Tom said Carver, Pa went quiet, dead quiet, then said, "My brother died under Carver at Dust Hill." And what followed was the kind of silence where decades of pain rise up like dust after hooves. And Pa didn't apologize, but he didn't kick Tom out either. Just told Eli, "You feed him, you're responsible for him." And that was enough, because Tom spent that night in the hayloft, grateful for a roof even if it wasn't his own, and over the next few days he fixed the broken hinges on the corral gate, taught Eli how to mend boots the old way, and even showed him how to track deer signs so subtle they looked like shadows on hard clay. And though the ranch hands laughed at first at the old man's limp, at his trembly hands, by the end of the week they were watching him shoot tin cans from 70 yards with Pa's old Winchester. Jaw slack because even with one bad leg, Tom was faster and steadier than any man under 40. And that caught the attention of Sheriff Delby, who came riding up one afternoon to ask what business a drifter had living on the McCrae spread. And when Tom stood to explain, Delby scoffed, "You ain't got no papers." No record, hell, for all I know, you're just another old fraud spinning soldier stories. And Eli, shaking with fury, stepped between them and said, "Then maybe you should come see the medals buried in his saddlebag." And when Delby demanded proof, Tom didn't say a word, just pulled out a folded, sun-bleached letter with the Army seal and the name Thomas Evers, written in careful block print by a lieutenant who died 20 years back. And Delby read it, slower than he needed to, then handed it back like it burned, muttering, "You should have come to town sooner," and rode off without a word more, leaving behind a new kind of silence, one that felt like apology even if it wasn't spoken. And that night, Pa sat Tom down on the porch and poured him a drink, which meant more than any medal, because Pa didn't drink with just anyone, and from then on, Tom wasn't just the old man anymore. He was Tom Evers, the man who taught Eli how to shoot from horseback, how to listen for rain days before it came, how to gut a fish without wasting a drop of meat. And when a rustler crew came through one night, trying to lift horses from the north pasture, it was Tom who fired the warning shot that clipped a hat clean off a man's head from 80 yards. And when the others fired back, it was Tom's steady hand and Eli's quick riding that outflanked them by the creek, sending them scattering like dogs with tails tucked. And after that night, no one questioned Tom's place on the ranch again. And when a journalist came through town writing about forgotten soldiers of the West, it was Eli who brought him to the porch and said, "If you want a story, this is the man you should talk to." And Tom, shy as ever, said, "Ain't much of a story, just didn't die yet." But the man wrote it up anyway, and weeks later, letters started arriving from old Army buddies, from families of men Tom had helped during the war, from folks who said, "I remember you, and you saved my uncle, and we thought you were dead." And one day, a black government car came rattling up the ranch road, two suits stepping out with folders and salutes and apologies for 30 years of bureaucratic oversight. And though Tom never asked for recognition, he took the folded flag and bronze star with quiet grace, then tucked them in the same saddlebag as his old boots, because they weren't for showing, they were for remembering. And when Eli asked him what he was going to do now, Tom said, "Ain't going anywhere," and he didn't. Not until the winter came and his lungs got too weak to fight the cold. And even then he died in the bunkhouse with Eli at his side, holding the young man's hand and saying, "You're the only one who saw me." And when the whole town turned up for the funeral, including Sheriff Delby, who saluted the casket, Ella stood by the grave and told the story of a man no one saw, until one boy did, and how that one moment of kindness brought a warrior back from the shadows, and how some heroes don't need battles to be brave. They just need someone to stop and listen.